Oh, I guess I can't stand in front of the projector. Thank you for coming. My name is Tepe. I am a local artist and creative that works out of Cincinnati. Let me take a quick minute to give you a little bit of my background. I started off at the School of the Art Institute of Chicago thinking that I wanted to be a fashion designer. I didn't know it at the time, but now I know that what I was really interested in was the sort of transformative power that clothing has. We all sort of take time to figure out who we are. We have an idea of who we think we are and who we want to be. And one of the amazing things that clothing does is it helps us sort of project the ideas that we have about ourselves. And we hope that people sort of see this communication and sort of accept what we're trying to tell them. So I didn't know that at the time. At the time I thought I just wanted to design clothing. While I was studying, I had an opportunity to work at the Art Institute of Chicago and develop some programming, multi-generational programming. That was the first time that I really got to see how art and the creative process can sort of influence the way in which we communicate who we think we are to ourselves and to others, and how we can sort of find ourselves. So starting there, I moved back home to Cincinnati, and honestly was pretty confused for a while because, right, I was gonna be like a designer, and I was gonna have this big agency, and I was gonna make clothes, but I really didn't care about the clothes. I cared more about the performance. And I cared more about the dialogue that happened around the clothing. So I actually started working for CPS for a little bit, Cincinnati Public Schools. And while I was there, so let me back up. I had no interest in children at all. I just thought that they were like little people that you had to talk slow to, and I just had no interest. So when I started collaborating with the educators at the Art Institute of Chicago, I was kind of surprised that they're much more complicated than that. They have ideas about who they are. So when I came back, I decided, okay, I'm gonna figure some things out, and I'm gonna work for CPS. And while I was at Cincinnati Public Schools, I got the opportunity to collaborate with some of the teachers. And so I would work with them to come up with some arts programming to use in their classrooms. So this was, we were going a little bit rogue, because you're not really supposed to be doing that. But I would make sure that the curriculum was integrated. But then we would do some creative problem solving. Or we would, in addition to looking at math problems, we would maybe write stories. And one of the things that was really fascinating to me was that, a 6-year-old was very particular about who they were. And they wanted you to know that. And they wanted you to accept them for who they were, and they wanted you to know that. And so at a really young age, we're sort of already thinking about identity and how we sort of enact that. So I decided to go back and get a master's in fine art because I'm a creative person. I love that with fine art, you sort of have this space to kind of do whatever you want to do. And we're living in this really interesting time where Pandora's box has been opened, and art can be anything. It can be an object, but it doesn't have to be an artifact. It can be a space. It can be an idea. It could be a performance. So I went back and I started to push and pull and explore what art could be. So if I say to you that I'm making an art piece, but that art piece involves you, to come and to participate and to invest, then in my opinion, and I think what the history of art has allowed us to do right now is to say, yeah, that's art. So this was exciting for me because this is new, right? So while I was at UC, my friends and I got together and we started curating shows because it's kind of hard if you're sort of redefining yourself as a professional artist to get out there. So we were going to do it ourselves. So we found a warehouse space, we called it Boom Gallery, and we just started putting on exhibitions. One of the first ones that we put on was called Pixel Sex, and it was about exploring sex in the digital age. Sex, sexuality, what we think about it, does it work? Do we miss the simpler times where you had to go to a bar and meet somebody, or maybe your dad or your parents, you sort of figured that out for you? So we started to explore that. What I was interested in, again, because of my background, was trying to figure out a way that people could come into the space and they could sort of experience my questions or my critique. At the time that I was developing the game or the work, we sort of go through these waves in the news where people are saying, oh, okay, this ethnic group or this minority, these people, they have these problems. So they're desirable or they're undesirable, and this is what statistical information from different dating websites says. I mean, like right now we're in it with Ashley Madison, right? Like apparently all the women on Ashley Madison were robots or something like that. So to me, this was really interesting. So I thought, okay, well, what is internet dating? Does this work? Can we really sort of tell somebody who we are in a forum that's already set up? There's little boxes that you put in information. The characters are limited. You don't really know who's gonna see this. You know, you don't want a coworker to see it, but you want like the one to see it, right? So how do you define yourself in this sort of landscape? So the game, to me, I started thinking about these tools in the landscape. We know that there's a common language. If I say something to you like, you have ideas in your head about what that means. We have a history now with that word. If I say something to you like, tell me about what a poke is, we have ideas about what that means. Whether or not it's effective or we like it, we have opinions, but we all sort of share commonality with that toolkit. So I was interested in exploring the toolkit to remove it from the digital landscape, bring it back into IRL, and to sort of challenge people with use these tools that we all know, that we all appreciate, that even if we have feelings about Facebook, we're sort of fluent in that language, and let's have a conversation. So if I'm looking at digital tools, and I have this picture of the dice up here because the dice was really important for the game. This is a technology that I think we don't think about as being a technology, but we all understand. You roll the dice, you perform this action, and it leads you to the next action. So I could sit the game down at a table, not give you a whole list full of instructions, and if I have 6 decks of cards, and I have this technology up here, you already know how to play. So Pixel Sex was the first time that I tried the game, or the work. And in addition to the cards and the die, I also wanted to define the landscape, because I was taking sort of ideas that we use for digital landscapes and I was bringing it into a real one. So I wanted to define that. I wanted to say, okay, here's a chair, here's a chair, here's a table, this is the space in which you play, there's one spot for one other person. But one of the things that I noticed really quickly, and which made sense, oops. Sorry. Anyway, it exploded. I'm not gonna worry about it. It exploded. People wanted to play in a big group, and that kind of made sense to me. Like, if you think about dating, especially online dating, like, we're not just putting our profile together and we're just sending it to one person. When I put a photo on Instagram, I'm not sending, I mean, I can send it directly to one person, but most of the time, I mean, I'm like casting my net out there and I'm seeing what I catch, and I'm seeing who's interested and who wants to engage with me. So I thought that it kind of made sense for the game. You have this really easy playing field, everyone understands, you roll the die, and you come up with the rules yourself. And I thought that was kind of an interesting sort of analogy for what happens in real life. The second place that I took the work to then was at the Contemporary Art Center. At the Contemporary Art Center, I proposed to be able to use the gallery, and I tried this chair thing again, but I thought, oh, I'm gonna make it larger, a bigger scale. So I set up chairs in groups. So there'd be 4, 6, 2, and I thought maybe, oh, you know, people will play, and maybe, you know, ding, 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 like somebody makes a connection, they go play over there by themselves, and the group dynamic keeps going forward. What I noticed was that that's not really what people wanted to do. People wanted to play in large groups. So when it was at the CAC, we had to find beanbag chairs, pull them out so that people could come together and get engaged. And then we sort of had this idea that, okay, well, we're gonna ring a bell. And every 10 minutes, people have to get up, they have to reintroduce themselves to people, they need to start playing again. What was also really interesting was the categories. So briefly, there's 6 cards. Like is a category. You actually have like on your chair. These are would you rather questions. So, I mean, you are literally just selecting one or the other. The second category was Instagram. So that is very literal photo sharing. I'm assuming that you are bringing a phone with you. That's a tool in your kit. And if you draw number 2, roll number 2, you pick an Instagram card, and you're literally getting your phone out, and you're sharing your pictures with the person next to you. Poke is number 3. That was asking you to physically touch the strangers that you're playing the game with in different ways. So I would say, hey, you know, one of the cards would say, give the person across from you butterfly kisses. Hold your arm out and measure to see who has the longest arm. Give someone a bear hug. 4 was restricted. So we're talking about intimacy. We're talking about the action of communicating your identity. So restricted were very personal questions that most online dating forums don't really ask, like how much money do you make? Do you have insurance? Do you have a problem with a black president? These were the questions if you rolled 4. 5 was status, so these were about past relationships. And 6 was tweet, and this was 6 words or less. 6 because that's the number on the die, and it would ask you a question and you would have to reduce it. And I tried to think of questions that were kind of hard to reduce, like describe your favorite person in your family. So those were the cards. I was worried, especially when I got to the CAC, that people would not be happy. Somebody would roll like a restricted card, for example, get a question that asked them if they've ever really had a racist thought before and what was that thought. And I thought people were gonna get mad. But what ended up happening was that because I didn't provide you rules, you had to come up with your own, people would change them. So if somebody rolled a 4 and that was the question they got, they could say, let's all share. So now you have intimacy with a group of people that you don't know. You have real honesty with a group of people that you don't know. I later did the game at Mount St. Joe, and this sort of version of the game was the most interesting to me. I was in a classroom The class was about sexuality and religion. It was a group of older women. Like, honestly, I think the youngest one was in her 50s. Nothing wrong with that, but older than me. And we decided to play the game in a group. So there's like maybe 10 of us, and we're sitting in a circle. And I felt like it was one of those moments that gives you goosebumps because you're tapping into something that is like way bigger than you. I mean, it's the kind of thing where like people talk about spirituality and transformative, you know, mumbo jumbo. But we're rolling the die, and I'm talking with these women who are the same age as my mother, and we're talking about, you know, the first time they ever fell in love, or what they really, you know, think about Islam, when they lost their virginity. And because the setting was so intimate, because every single person had to share, it sort of became this like odd elder knowledge sharing circle. And it was interesting to me that this idea of a poke, which for me on Facebook is meaningless. I mean, when I think about poking, I mean, I don't even know if it's still available. But what, I mean, what is it? You know, like I think I remember in 2008 getting a poke from somebody and being like, okay, now what? You know, like, all right. But I'm using that sort of like gesture, but I mean, it's not a true gesture online. I mean, maybe it's a click, you know, but I'm taking that and I'm using it to create real intimacy with somebody that I honestly would have never gotten to know in such a profound way unless I had the game. So I thought it was a really successful art piece in that way. I kind of was thinking about today sharing the game with you and trying out something a little bit different. Because of time, it's kind of hard to move 100 people out and to play the game in groups. So what I did was I gave everybody a tweet card and I gave everybody a like card. So now remember, tweets are questions, sort of difficult, involved questions that you have to reduce into 6 words. You reduce the answer into 6 words. And like questions are would you rather. So, you know, would you rather, I don't know, lick a porcupine or, I don't know, drink acid? I don't know, you know. So what I'm inviting everyone to do for the Q&A section of this conversation is to maybe come up with 1 or 2 questions. If you want to ask your question, raise your hand. And then I invite the audience to decide if you want to answer the question. If you want to answer the question, raise your hand, and I'll select a couple people, and we'll sort of share as a group. I also understand that some of you might have some questions for me about my process, so those are welcome too. But I thought it would be kind of fun, instead of you getting to know me better, that we all sort of get to know each other a little bit better. So I don't have any cards, but I could start. My question is going to be a tweet question. So if you would like to answer it, 6 words or less. And I'm going to start with describe your family. Would anyone like to answer? Anyone? Do you want to answer? Yeah.
6 words. Kids starting to take over dinner.
That's a good one. Thank you. Yeah.
Lots of love, a little crazy.
Yeah.
I'll do it in 2. Cheerfully dysfunctional.
That's good. Does anyone have a question that they want to share? What about you? Come up with a this or that. So who wants to answer? Yeah. Who else? Yeah.
It would be into water.
Clarification helps.
Presumably we're talking about a soft landing.
Right. Unless it was defining your death. What about another question? Anyone? Okay, I'll do another tweet. Describe your first date. Anyone want to answer? Okay. Yeah. Anyone else? Can I pick on you? Yeah.
I don't remember.
How about you? Can I pick on you?
Oh gosh, I think I have one word too many, but it was like boat ride with love of my life.
Oh. How about one more? Does anyone have? Yeah.
Awkward, I suspect.
How about one more question? Just to anyone. Yeah.
Would you rather throw up marbles or sweat cheese?
Sweat cheese or what?
Throw up marbles.
Throw up marbles. Oh. That's a good one. Okay, how about we do a crowd one? So if you'd rather throw up marbles, raise your hand. If you'd rather sweat cheese, raise your hand. Exactly, you just shower it on. Yeah. Does anyone have any questions for me? Yeah.
I'd like to hear about where you see the future going with it, or also I can see this being a product, and you think about making it so that people could buy and
Yeah.
use it in their organization or at home.
I mean, I've definitely thought about like a Cards Against Humanity kind of situation where people can download it, you know, you can come up with your own questions and just sort of distribute it however you want. My only challenge with that has been, quite honestly, I'm not totally sure how to do it. And you know, when I thought about selling it online, I think what's really sort of magical about this game is getting groups of people that don't know each other together and sort of like forcing awkward, uncomfortable situations. But what ends up happening is that because the playing field is even, like you're all bringing the same thing to the table. If you don't want to answer the question in many ways, that's just as telling, you know, with some of the questions as just answering the question. Like I said, what I noticed was people were much more forgiving than I thought that they would be with those hard questions, which to me was really endearing and felt like, oh, okay, yeah, like this intimacy thing, like this is real and this is important and it's something that we need a little bit more of, because I think if I can sit down and have a conversation with you, then we understand each other. So my fear with marketing it is that that is gone. You know, how do you get strangers together? You know, I guess I could sell it to bars or something like that, you know, but it's not the same as going to venues like this or universities and sharing it within a classroom. And so that the dialogue, you know, it's all these people sort of here in the same space, we're willing to have a conversation with each other. So, but I mean, I think that that's like really the challenge that artists and designers have. You know, you have this idea, it's precious to you, and you want to put it out there because you want to share, but something happens when you release it. So that's where I'm at. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Are there other subjects you want to explore? Do you feel like you want to see this?
Well, with my creative practice, I talk a lot about race and identity. I did a piece where I made ceramic tiles of my nose and sort of left them around to sort of try to have a dialogue about race history and the history of defining races. Because if you look at like the census, for example, the way that we define white or like mulatto, I mean, these are all things that have changed through the years. This particular game for me was really about exploring how we develop our own identity and then how we use that to try to create intimacy with other people. So this is sort of its own beast. You know, I think it's fun because you get to invest in the experience. So this is sort of like growing and getting out there more so than some of the artifact works. But yeah, like this, every time I get to share this, it's just really exciting. So, yeah.
Have you had any like success stories since it kind of stemmed from dating and
Yeah.
Match.com?
I don't know. I think that would be really interesting. Like maybe if I ever got to the place where it's an app or something like that people could share, it'd be really cool to know. Like, hey, I met, you know, so and so. Great game. What was your question?
What was the symbolism behind the triangle?
I was kind of thinking about the digital realm as being this sort of like ether place, and it's coming down to this moment. That's my arty-farty conversation reason for a very simple shape. But yeah, I do, a friend of mine was like, well, this is female and you should do male or whatever. And I was like, well, I wasn't even thinking of that. I was just thinking of like the internet, like being pixels up there and like, so anyway, yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
Do you think it's easier for people to reveal who they are online or offline?
I don't know, you know, because, so like, let's look at Ashley Madison, for example. Like, I mean, really, if what they're telling me is that, you know, 1/3 of a dating forum or any social media, like what Instagram, if somebody told me 1/3 of Instagram was just businesses, I mean, that starts to change the way that I look at that network. Okay, it's not real, you know. I think that's why people get so worked up when you start a new app like Instagram and there's no ads. And then all of a sudden I'm going through my feed and every 3 pictures it's Gap or something. You know, I mean, it's like I didn't go to that space to engage with Gap. I went on that space to share my experiences with people all over the world. So I think the internet can be, you know, and I think we see, like when you look at like Egypt, for example, and you find out that, you know, the government is gone, but people are communicating because somebody's smart enough to figure out, if I do this little thing with my phone, then we build a Wi-Fi network and we're still able to communicate. You know, I mean, that's revolution. So, I mean, I think to say one is better than the other, I mean, you need to communicate, you need brains, you know what I mean? You need to have like conversation, but to have that tool, I think is really incredibly powerful, you know? So I think both, yeah. Yeah.
I think you just started to answer this, but how has this changed the way that you look at or think about social media? And how do you think we can bring the same very authentic level of interaction and intimacy to Facebook and Instagram?
I think that what's changed for me is seeing how forgiving people are, like when there's a face. So when you hear about like internet trolls or whatever, I mean, maybe these are real opinions, you know, like somebody gets shot and then there's like a troll and they're like, they deserved it, you know, and then everybody's angry. Okay, but like if I'm looking at your face and I'm seeing that you didn't say that the way that I thought you said it, you know, you said it maybe with different facial expression or something, that allows me to be emotional with you or to read emotion. I think one of the things that we have to remember is that when we give people space to communicate, they're gonna say things that we don't want to hear, but that communication is still as important. You know, somebody saying something that maybe we think is ignorant or something that we think is hateful, I mean, having that space to engage with that person, I think is just as important as the freedom for that person to even make that statement. So I think that's what's really, you know, it gets limited when we start editing each other. You know, like, I think it's odd, but I think like censorship is what you know, we think censorship makes us really safe, but like, I mean, I don't know if that's true. Are we good on time, or does anyone else have any questions? Or even a statement? I mean, yeah.
When's your next exhibition?
That is a good question. I don't know. Feel free to follow me online on Facebook. I usually post when I do things. I'm sort of entering a making phase. So I don't know about other creative artists, but I tend to go through a phase where I'm making and I kind of like disappear and I'm just in my studio. And then I make a bunch of stuff and then I get nervous that nobody's seen it. So then I start trying to figure out how to get it out there. So yeah, I'm not sure.
What do you like to make?
I do like everything. My background is very concept-based, so my focus is on identity. Like, for example, with the online dating or with race and identity, when I'm not sure what I want to do, I tend to make wearable art. So like I'll make masks or I'll make garments or something like that, but that's not usually what I feel like are the big pieces that I like to share. That's sort of like me going into a comfortable space, because I mean that's obvious, like a mask, you know. I just don't think it's interesting for people, but so I'll get an idea or an inspiration, I'll read the news and I'll think, oh, you know, this is interesting, like, and then I get an idea and I do what I gotta do to make the idea. So if it means watching some YouTube videos and figuring out how to saw some wood, you know, I'll figure it out. Yeah.
Are there artists that are big influence on you, or have in the past?
I am really influenced by the news, and I'm actually really influenced by fashion. So like someone like Alexander McQueen for me was really influential. Nick Cave, who I studied under, is really influential. I mean, because to me, like those people just blow it so far out of the box that, I mean, anything is possible, you know? And then there's that craft too. Anything else? Did you have a question? Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah. Kara Walker, who works with silhouettes. If you're not familiar with her, I mean, she uses silhouettes. What's powerful to me is it's like that reduction. So you're just looking at like a black blob, you know, but she's communicating so much. So anyway, I have the game set up outside. If you want to play, you're more than welcome to. Thank you again for coming and your interest in my work. So have a great day. Thanks.